Part of our job in the Church of Jesus Christ is to be peacemakers, not troublemakers. We are to bring people together, not blow them apart. So in your notes, the fact is that the world is filled with broken relationships. Everyone wants to agree with that? The world is filled with broken relationships? Because you are going to be hurt in life. You have already been hurt, and I'm sorry. You've been hurt by what people said about you, or by what people thought about you, or by what people have done to you. Emotionally, physically, verbally, financially. Many of you carry deep wounds from hurts in the past, from a parent or a partner or a peer or even a professional. Somebody in your life who wounded you deeply. As someone who cares about you, you are going to have to let go of that hurt. You're going to have to learn to let go of the past. And that's not an easy thing to do. The fact is, in your notes, there's only one antidote to painful memories, and that is forgiveness. There's no other options. Nothing else can set you free from a past except forgiveness. Offering forgiveness, asking for forgiveness, accepting forgiveness. If you want to get on with your life and you want to be happy in life, you're going to have to learn to let go of the past. There's so much faulty thinking about forgiveness. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. In your notes, forgiveness, that is instant. Trust is rebuilt over time. Forgiveness is by grace, and therefore it is instant. Trust is by works, and therefore takes time. So when somebody hurts you, you have to forgive them. In fact, you're commanded by God to forgive them. And we're looking at a couple of reasons why we have to do this in a minute. But you don't have to trust other people instantly. If they have lost your trust, trust has to be rebuilt over and over. Some of you have been hurt badly by someone that you loved, and even the thought of offering forgiveness to that person, a parent, a partner, an ex, the thought of offering forgiveness to that person is almost unthinkable. So today we're going to ask three questions. First, why? Why should I forgive? Secondly, where do I get the power to forgive? And thirdly, how do I do it? So first of all, why should I forgive? A in your notes, reason number one. In your notes, I have to forgive people who hurt me because God has forgiven me. In fact, the number one reason to forgive someone who has hurt me is because God has forgiven me. Looking at Ephesians 4, verse 22, Paul says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you." See in your notes the fact that you will never have to forgive more. You will never have to forgive more than God has already forgiven you. See, God forgives completely. God forgives unconditionally. God forgives you constantly and persistently. And God forgives you even when you don't know that you're blowing it. He forgives you and He wipes it out. When you put your trust in Jesus, you accept that Jesus paid for all of your sins on the cross. God just wipes them all out. And you will never have to forgive anybody more than God has forgiven you. But you really want to know why you're having such a hard time forgiving other people? The problem is in your notes. When you personally don't feel forgiven, then you do not feel forgiving. When you do not feel God's grace, then you don't feel like being gracious to anybody else. So the number one reason you have a hard time letting go of those hurts is because you do not feel forgiven. When you experience, you see, the forgiveness of God, once you understand how much, how totally, how completely God has forgiven you, you just start being a whole lot more forgiving to other people. But until that happens in your life, and you accept the forgiveness of Jesus, you're going to have a hard time letting go of your hurts. Reason number 2, that I have to forgive people who hurt me. In your notes, because resentment doesn't work. Resentment is self-defeating. In fact, resentment is self-destructive. In the Bible, there's this guy by the name of Job. He lost everything in a single day. Terrorists came in, killed all of his kids. They stole all of his cattle, ruined his crops. And on top of that, he got a terrible disease. Everything went wrong. And if anybody had a right to be bitter and resentful, Job did. Look at Job 5, verse 2. He says, to worry yourself to death with resentment, that would be a foolish and senseless thing to do. So in your notes, resentment, first of all, is unreasonable. It's illogical. It's irrational. It just doesn't make sense. It's foolish. It is unreasonable. In fact, when we fill our lives with resentment, we're really doing dumb things. If you've ever seen an angry person out in public, they really make fools of themselves. When you get resentful, you immediately lose 50% of your IQ. Resentment just makes you look foolish. I watched this theology show on TV called Three Stooges. Curly was upset with Mo. Mo kept hitting Curly on the chest. Every time Mo would slap Curly on the chest, he would even get more upset. So Curly decides to pay him back, to get even with Mo, by strapping dynamite to his own chest, to blow Mo's hand off the next time he slaps him. In your notes, resentment does not hurt the other person. It hurts you. When you're sitting around and you're upset with someone who hurt you 10 years ago, you're stewing about it, you're spewing about it, you're just hurting yourself. They're not even thinking about it. It just keeps you in pain, and that's dumb. You're allowing people who have hurt you in the past to continue to hurt you in the present, simply by rehearsing your hurts over and over, and that's stupid. Look at Job 18, verse 4. You are only hurting yourself with your anger. So in your notes, resentment is also unhelpful. It is unreasonable. It is also unhelpful. It always hurts you more than the person you're upset with. And you are miserable. In fact, the most unhappy people are bitter people. Look at Job 21. Some men stay healthy until the day they die. Others have no happiness at all. They live and die with bitter hearts. See, research has shown that the most unhealthy emotion known to the human being is bitterness. And you know, resentment is just plain unhealthy. When you hold resentment in your heart, it's like taking cancer into your heart. It's like taking a fire into your chest. Doctors tell us that 50% of all the people in hospitals today could go home right now if they knew how to get rid of their guilt or their resentment, because that is the source of their pain. Guilt, the things that I feel guilty about doing to other people. Resentment, the things other people have done to me. And God did not make our bodies to carry around guilt and carry around resentment. You know, people today are so concerned about eating healthy. Well, that's good. But if they don't get rid of resentment, it's not what you eat that matters the most. It's what's eating you. When you have resentment in your heart, it's eating you alive. So resentment is unreasonable, unhelpful, unhealthy. You have to let go. But you say, Pastor, I just cannot do it. In your notes B, where do you get the power? Where do I get the power to let go of my hurts? That's a good question. When you say it just hurts too much, I cannot forgive them. You know what? You're absolutely right. You can't. And there's only one source. And you know that source is Jesus. So you don't have enough love in your heart to let go of all the hurt that you are experiencing in life. And that's why you need Jesus. And you cannot humanly manufacture enough forgiveness to handle all the times you're going to be misused or abused or hurt in life. You just can't. You have to go to have a bigger source. You have to have an unlimited source of forgiveness. Look at 2 Peter. By his divine power, he writes, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. Because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature, escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. So if only we would get to know Jesus better, if only you seek to know Jesus more and more, then you grow to become a person with divine nature, that you get the ability to forgive then and make peace with those who do not deserve it. You have been hurt, and many of you have been hurt very deeply. As somebody who loves you, I'm telling you, you have to let it go. Thirdly, in your notes, C, 3 steps to help you learn how to forgive. Number 1, relinquish my right to get even. That's the heart of forgiveness. You have to let them go scot-free. But you say, wait, that's not fair. Who said forgiveness is fair? Was it fair for God to forgive you? Don't you deserve to be punished for all the sins that you have done? But God does not give you what you deserve. God gives you what you need. And it's a pure act of God's grace, of forgiveness for you. Look at Romans 12. Never avenge yourselves. Leave that to God. For he has said that he will repay those who deserve it. He is a just God. So you let God, who is just, who never hurt anybody, never done anything wrong, let him be the impartial judge. And God says to us, relinquish your right to get even. Look at Matthew 18, where Peter asks, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? No, Jesus replied, 70 times 7. In other words, that means forgiveness is continual. Forgiveness is never a one-shot deal. If it really hurts, then it's got to be repeated over and over and over. And that is so important. And here's how it works. In your notes, every time you remember your hurt, you must release it. You remember it, you release it. You remember it, you release it. It's not a one-time shot. And the devil, he keeps bringing it back just to hurt you more. So every time you remember it, you what? Release it. How do you know then when you are totally released it? Because it doesn't hurt anymore. But each time you remember, you keep forgiving them. And now here's the key in your notes. Every time you rehearse a hurt, it just makes it deeper. Each time you rehearse it, you deepen it. But in your notes, every time you release your hurt, you make it weaker. Rehearse it, gets deeper. Release it, it gets weaker. I relinquish my right to get even. In your notes, number 2, refocus on God's purpose for my life. So first of all, relinquish my right to get even. Secondly, refocus not on the pain, but on what God's purpose is for my life. Look at Job 11. Put your heart right, reach out to God. Then all your troubles will fade from your memory, like floods that are past, remember no more. See, in your notes, don't focus on the hurts. You focus on the hope. You do not let the past hurts control you. You focus on the hope that God gives for your future. And in your notes, you don't focus on the pain. You focus on the purpose. Whatever you focus on is going to control you. And if you want God and His purpose for your life controlling you, then you have to let go of the past. Why is this so important? You're not going to like this, but I want you to write it down. In your notes, if you don't release them, you will start to resemble them. Because whatever you are focusing on, you're going to become like. If you don't release them, you're going to start to resemble them. I'm never going to become like my mother, we say. Oh, yeah? I'm never going to be like my dad. Oh, yeah? Job tells you to do two things, though, in your notes. Step number one, you do the right thing. You put your heart right, you forgive them. You release them. Why? Because God has forgiven you. And because resentment, you see, doesn't work. And step number two, you ask Jesus to come in. Reach out to God. You need to say, Jesus, I need you to fill me with your love and your forgiveness. Look at Luke 6. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. And pray for those who mistreat you. This is a real test then. Can you pray for those who have hurt you? Can you pray that God would bless them? This is a step that says now you're in control. They're no longer controlling your life. So to let go of my hurts, I must relinquish my right to get even, refocus on God's purpose, and in your notes, number 3, I need to respond to evil with good. I respond to the evil in my life with good. Look at Romans 12. Don't be overcome by evil, Paul says, but overcome evil with good. You need to memorize that verse so when you confront that store clerk this week who is a jerk, you don't overcome evil by criticizing them. You don't change the world by criticizing it. You overcome evil with good. Promote reconciliation. So in conclusion, the big word reconciliation means to make peace. If a husband and wife reconcile, they make peace with each other. When two nations reconcile, they reconcile and they stop having war against each other. And that's part of our lives as followers of Jesus. In your notes, we're to be agents of reconciliation. Look at 2 Corinthians 5. Please read it with me together out loud. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. 3 steps to let go of my hurts. Number 1, relinquish my right to get even. Number 2, refocus on God's purpose. And number 3, respond to evil with good. Amen.